Welcome back to Breakfast Central. The federal government is projecting that Nigeria's oil production could reach 2.7 million barrels per day by 2027. This forecast was shared by the President's Special Advisor on Energy, Olu Verheijen, in an interview and reported by Bloomberg. She credits improved security in oil fields and transportation for this potential increase. She says also highlighting that removing fuel subsidies has revitalized the downstream oil market, making investments in refineries more attractive.
Now, here's what you should know about this story. The target of 2.7 million barrels per day includes both crude oil and condensate, providing flexibility in meeting production goals. Nigeria's current OPEC plus quota for crude oil production is set at 1.5 million barrels per day. The country's oil production reached 1.67 million barrels per day in December 2024, showing recovery from the 2022 low of 1.1 million barrels per day. And to shed more light on this development and what this means for Nigeria's energy sector and economy at large, we're joined by Olu Verheijen, an energy consultant, joins us live from Kent in the United Kingdom. Warm welcome to you, Cheryl, and thanks for joining us on Breakfast Central. Now, Cheryl, when you first saw this news, I mean, it sounds very ambitious. 2.7 million barrels per day for both crude oil and condensate. How realistic is this? And do you think in 2027, do you think it's achievable? Can you kindly unmute your device, please? Thank you.
On paper, Nigeria has the potential for sure, because we have the significant reserves with the right investment and political will and strategy. Increasing our production, is very, very possible to 2.7 million barrels. However, there are certain hurdles and certain things that need to be put in place.
Well, when you say that there are certain things that need to be put in place, what would those things look like? What would that picture look like?
So the major hindrance in Nigeria is increasing its oil production is insecurity in the Niger Delta region. So if we were to find a way to harmonize, the community, the people, and ensure that the government actually is doing a lot about curbing that insecurity, pipeline vandalism, and all of these kind of things, definitely we'll be able to harness the potential and reach, even surpass 2.7 million barrels a year. Because we see that a lot of the international oil companies are also leaving or diversifying and divesting from the onshore assets to focus majorly offshore due to all these insecurity reasons. So that's one of the things that needs to be properly taken care of in order for us to get to that level.
All right, and as you speak about this security being one of the challenges, of course, over the years we've had challenges with pipeline vandalism and insecurity, not just of humans but around us, our sides. Do you have faith that work is being put in place and the necessary steps are being taken to guarantee the security in this sector?
Yes, I believe so. I mean, the current administration has been doing quite a lot, and we've not heard so much about pipeline vandalism. We've heard, significant news and information about people investments into the oil industry, in terms of infrastructure upgrades. Like the news reported, there's a lot of investments in, refineries and all of that, of course, and those also would also need pipelines and everything in order to make them more profitable. I think there's a political will, but we just need to see how far it goes for that to be properly solved. The community, however, needs to be carried along. It shouldn't all just be all violence, but community management needs to be needs to be put into consideration.
Now, Cheryl, it's been very few years since the petroleum industry bill, as it was then, was signed into law to deregulate the downstream sector of the Nigerian petroleum industry. In your assessment, how have we fared so far, and how Nigerian indigenous companies are faring in the petroleum industry?
Well, the bill has been passed. Certain aspects of the bills are still in contention. We can see that a lot of the local players are somewhat benefiting, but not, ultimately. There are some aspects of it that needs a lot of government intervention. So one of the things that has been introduced in the bill will be that host community management, whereby it requires a lot of the companies to invest a certain percentage of their profits into the host communities. We are hoping that that will, reduce these insecurities. That will also encourage people within the communities to partake within, to basically see themselves as owners. There's some other parts of the bill that people require more from the government, but at this point, considering where Nigeria is economically, we might not be able to get those level of commitments from the government. But I believe that if we have good understanding and everybody works with that, public-private partnership model, we should be able to see profitability.
All right. Is it also of concern to look at areas where there is tension, tension in the local communities, especially those who have had historical tensions, for example, the case of Ogoni land? Is that something that we'll look at or something that should be considered, as we're planning to increase our output?
Yes, it should be properly taken care of. So the thing about the Ogoni land, the cleanup needs to be done. Several committees have been inaugurated, which consists of primarily people from within the community, and they've asked the communities to pretty much get the right professionals for themselves, check within themselves before they then actually seek people from the outside. We are particular people in Nigeria, and I believe that we're solving those kind of issues. Those areas we need to take them more seriously in order to ensure that the primary challenges are taken care of, and then we can be able to harness, because the Ogoni land is sitting on a lot of reserves that we are currently not producing. And definitely, if we solve that issue, do the cleanup, and actually make sure that the host communities are happy, we'll definitely be able to harness the oil that we have in those regions.
Now, Sharon, before we begin to wrap up, you look at major oil-producing countries like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, for example. They're looking beyond oil. They're hosting they're hosting boxing matches, sports. They're opening up to tourism and all. And we've been a monoproduct economy since independence. Shouldn't it be time we start looking beyond oil so that our economy is not susceptible to fluctuation in global prices of crude oil? What strategies should the government be looking at beyond oil?
While we're still very dependent on oil for huge of our reserves, we can see, if we refer to the last, Dirty December in Lagos, we can see that, Lagos, Nigeria is pretty much, also tilting itself a lot and investing a lot towards tourism. And we believe that in this 2025 that we find ourselves, there'll be a lot of investments in tourism as we see that there's huge potentials, Congrats to Thames, who also won Grammy. We see that the Afrobeats is also generating a lot of buzz for Nigeria, and a lot of people are interested in Nigeria. People want to come to Nigeria. People want to see Nigeria. And Nigerian people are indeed fantastic people. So it's up to the government, for us to, in tourism in Nigeria, there are a lot of very, very good locations. So of course, we invest in tourism. We can also look at gas. This is something that we have in very, 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 very high quantity, So if we do diversify into gas, build a lot of infrastructure that can support gas, do a lot of refinery, encourage refining so that we can also export refined products which are needed. Remember that was just the byproducts of crude oil, not just
PMS.
AGO, jet fuel, and all of that. There's still a lot of other byproducts that different industries that are used across different industries. So I believe if we expand the value chain, not just in oil, Nigeria has potential. Both tourism, we have a lot of human capital that can be exported in terms of talent. We have our content creators who are also bringing in a lot of FX into the country. Basically, we see our fintech industry growing. Nigeria has very huge potentials, and we can diversify from being just a crude oil dependent country to actually being, somewhat, we can sell services. They have there's a whole lot to think
Some
about.
Good news. There's light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, we've been talking about diversification of the economy for the longest time. I look forward to actually seeing what that looks like in practical terms. But let's still go back to this expectation for 2027. Do you think that, or how would you say that our OPEC quota would influence the achieving of this goal? And do you also think that the Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, has a role to play in us achieving this goal?
Yeah, so the way the OPEC works is they give the quota according to your production. You have to show capacity. At some point in time, Nigeria was producing over 2.1 million barrels a day. Right now, it's reduced because our production dropped all the way to maybe 1.1. That's lost about half of what we are. So OPEC will adjust accordingly. So if we were producing at full capacity, that's including crude oil and condensates, and we have shown that capacity, we can always, go back to OPEC to request for an increase in the quota, which I'm sure most likely would be accepted because Nigeria is a big player, whether we like it or not, in the global oil trade. What was the second question again?
The second question was Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, NUPRC, and
Yes,
the role they may have
definitely.
to play.
Definitely, the NUPRC has a big role to play. NUPRC, in collaboration with the federal government, will definitely need to, give out incentives to people who are. It's not an easy sector to play in, so they need to give out incentives, tax waivers, and as much as possible that will let people be able to invest and actually play properly in that industry. Basically, for the NUPRC, they just need to set ground rules that work, that will benefit country, benefit the businesses, and benefit all Nigerians altogether.
All right, Seun Daniel, thank you very much for joining us this morning to have this conversation. Wish you a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you,
it's probably
Cheryl.
a very cold morning there, so enjoy your rest of the day.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Thank you very much.